I mean, you can go ahead and turn the light on, but it's not going to save you. Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thank you for joining me. Today, I have a review of the novel Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. This was published by Random House in June of 2024, and I received a copy from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. And right off the bat, I'll say this novel is scary. It does a great job of actually grabbing onto you and not letting go. Josh Malerman is known for the novel Bird Box, which was made into a film, and I've seen the film, but I haven't read the book, so I did not know what to expect going into this, and I was genuinely surprised and delighted with the novel we got. The novel itself, the story is very simple. We follow a young girl named Bella. She's 8 years old, and she has a boogeyman in her room. And at first, the boogeyman is a friend to her, and you find out her parents are having issues, and so the house isn't necessarily stable, and so she needs this friend. But then slowly, the boogeyman asks more and more of her. Now, the boogeyman, which calls itself Other Mother, which is terrifying right away, asks Bella to let me in your heart. And Bella keeps saying no. And eventually, the boogeyman doesn't like to hear no anymore. And Other Mother starts escalating things. And that is the whole premise of the story. The whole story is told from Bella's point of view. So it's written from the point of view of a young girl. And as a result of that, the characters are messy and they're fuzzy. And yet we still have what feel to be rounded characters that are genuine, but since they are presented from the point of view of a young child, you don't have all of the defining characteristics. But to some extent, that's nicer because we experience them through her eyes. And similarly, the world building is very simple. It's just our world, so you don't know anything special about it. Once you jump into the novel, you feel comfortable with the world as it exists because it's just the world that you already know. There's nothing added onto it. But it is seen through the eyes of a child, which makes it really big and really scary. And it doesn't leave anything stable or reliable because, from her point of view, everything is being pulled out from under her. And so there are no answers in this world for her. Now, sometimes when a story is written from the point of view of a young child, then I find that sometimes the language can feel forced or it can feel trite and it doesn't feel realistic. It feels like what an adult thinks a young child should say or experience. But that isn't the case here. I think Malerman does a great job of really capturing what this experience is like for this young girl. There are some points, I'd say, later in the book, especially when, for instance, Bella is asleep, or excuse me, pretending to be asleep, and there are adults talking in the room behind her, and she relays their conversation to the reader. And in those cases, I wouldn't expect an 8-year-old to be able to relay those conversations quite as word for word as she did. But if you can suspend your disbelief just a little bit, the writing itself is good. It feels naturalistic. The conversations feel genuine, and everything is paced really well. So you're able to forgive it, and it doesn't ever impact the story in a negative way. And for the most part, any of the cliches or the negative aspects of having a young narrator are avoided. And instead, it just adds a real strength to the story. Because when you have a child as your narrator, you have an inherently unreliable narrator. So you're always forced to question what is actually happening and how much of it is made up in the mind of this child. And that doesn't just go for the supernatural elements or her experiences of being haunted by this boogeyman, but also her understanding of what's happening with her parents and with her extended family and with their friends. And so you're always given this limited information, which makes everything scarier. But what makes this book special is that everyone does the right thing. Very early on in the novel, her parents believe her. Usually the parents don't believe the child, and that is the biggest, parents are the biggest obstacles in any horror book or movie. Yet here they believe her, and I won't say why, what happens that causes them to believe her, because that gives a little bit away, and it's a good scene, but they believe her, and they do all the right things. What would you do if you believed there was some sort of entity? You don't know what it is, if it's a demon, if it is some other supernatural entity, if there's some sort of entity haunting your child, what would you do? They tried to call exorcists and they realize it's hard to find an exorcist on the internet. And so they think maybe it's the house. And so they try to go stay at their friend's house. They try to go visit family. They try all these things that we would do. And, as the novel progresses, they have less and less success, or success to varying degrees. But that makes the novel compelling. They aren't running upstairs when they should be going out the front door. They're doing all the right things. And yet she's still haunted. There still is this entity saying, "Let me in your heart," which is terrifying, especially to a parent. And to have this entity calling itself Other Mother, even more terrifying. And so you have this lonely child who's looking for healthy relationships, whose parents are going through something that is causing her to feel isolated and alone and confused. And you have this being saying, I will be your mother. Just let me into your heart. And they can't do anything to escape it. So it's spine tingling in that way. Malerman does a great job building atmosphere, and yet he writes a story that's eminently readable. You don't want to put it down. It flows really well. It's paced really well. And in terms of the scares, nothing feels easy. Everything is earned, whether it be the relationship between the parents and the child, or the relationship between the child and the boogeyman, or any of the things that are going on, any of the frightening, scary moments are never the literary equivalent of a jump scare. Instead, they all feel earned, which makes them even more frightening. That alone, I think, makes the story worth reading. It's scary, it's fun. Once you pick it up, you don't want to put it down. It has a great protagonist in this young girl and a family that cares about her, but they aren't perfect and they have problems. And so you see these two parents who don't agree on everything are trying their best, but don't know what to do and don't know what their best should look like in this situation. You can read the story just at that level and have a great time. And yet the story also offers us some ideas to think about and these themes to explore that make, I think, that allow it to have even a little more depth and give more to contemplate. What happens when your haunted house is being haunted by your destructive relationships and your disturbing emotions? How can you outrun those? How do our secrets and the secrets of those we care about, the secrets of our loved ones, fill our lives and take up all of our emotional space? So we are suffocating under the weight of these secrets and don't have the ability to have healthy relationships in any meaningful way. What happens when all of the disrupting and dysregulating experiences ask for more space than we're able to give them? What are we left to do when we're overwhelmed by those dysfunctional relationships and disturbing emotions? How can you grow up to be whole and to be healthy and to be balanced when all you have around you is dysfunction and secrecy and distrust? What happens when those are your boogeymen? When those are the things that haunt you? And no matter what you do, they don't go away. Those are some of the ideas that Malerman is pointing us toward and letting us think about as you see this young girl who is doing her best and yet is experiencing all this dysregulation from her family and from her parents who care about her genuinely, but they have their own things going on. And so she's left alone. And what fills that space is this entity. So in that regard, the story is genuinely scary, and it also has some interesting things to think about on a number of different levels. The writing, as I said, is strong. It is very propulsive. It never feels like you're being talked down to, even though it's written from the point of view of a young child. That helps the story because it allows it to be fuzzier around the edges and doesn't ever feel trite, doesn't feel forced. The conversations and the language flows really well, feels naturalistic and realistic, and ultimately it is scary. And what happens when the best you can do isn't good enough, That's what this story asks us to reckon with. So with that, I'll say that I highly recommend this story. I hope you check it out. Have any of you read it? It came out over a month ago by the time I posted this video. Maybe you have. Maybe you have read other books by Josh Malerman, such as Bird Box. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. I look forward to hearing from you. Now, I'll say thank you for coming and joining me today. I appreciate you. Be kind to yourself, take care of each other, and go slowly.